Hi everyone, Albert Stepniak, your friendly real estate agent here in South Florida. So I have some good news for those of you who've been thinking about buying a home or maybe refinancing. Mortgage rates have recently dropped to their lowest point in almost a year. This is a pretty big deal. To give you the numbers, the average rate on a 30-year mortgage went down from 6.5% to 6.35% just in the last week. The rate for a 15-year mortgage also fell from 5.6 to 5.5%. These changes might seem small, but they can make a real difference in your monthly payments. Now, you might be wondering why this is happening. Well, it's all connected to what's going on with the Federal Reserve, which is our country's central bank. They're expected to cut a key interest rate pretty soon. The Fed doesn't directly set mortgage rates, but their decisions influence them. When they lower their rates, it often leads to lower rates for things like home loans. Another factor is the job market. Recently, the numbers have shown that the job market might be slowing down a bit. This has a big impact on the Fed's decision because they use this information to figure out if they need to adjust the interest rates to keep the economy stable. So, what does this all mean for you? It's a great opportunity. We've seen a lot of people jumping on this chance to either buy a home or refinance their current one. In fact, applications for mortgages have shot up to their highest level in 3 years. However, a lot of experts are saying we shouldn't expect rates to drop much further. In fact, it's possible they could even go back up a little after the Fed makes its next move. So if you've been on the fence, now might be the time to act. Lower rates make buying a home more affordable, but it could also bring more buyers into the market. This might lead to more competition for homes. So it's a good idea to be prepared. If you're ready, this could be the perfect moment to take that next step. Now let's talk about what's going on with the job market and what it might mean for us here in Florida. You might have heard some news reports about people filing for unemployment, and the numbers can be a little confusing. I'll break it down for you. Basically, when someone loses their job, they can file what's called an initial jobless claim. It's a way of tracking how many people are newly out of work. Last week, we saw some interesting numbers. Here in Florida, the number of people who filed for these claims actually went down a little bit. It's been a pretty good trend for us, with our numbers staying under 6,000 for a few weeks now, which is a good sign. Now, nationally, the picture is a bit different. We saw a pretty big jump in the number of people filing for unemployment across the country. In fact, it was the highest number of claims in a single week since late 2021. So while things are looking pretty stable here in Florida, it's something to keep an eye on when you look at the whole country. These numbers can give us some clues about the health of the economy, but they don't tell the whole story. We'll get a better sense of how things are really doing when the next round of unemployment rates comes out for both Florida and the rest of the country. Just something to keep in mind as we navigate the market. I've got some exciting news for anyone thinking about where to settle down for retirement. A new study by Wallet Hub just came out, and it turns out Florida is a fantastic spot. 4 of our cities, Orlando, Miami, Tampa, and Fort Lauderdale, are on the list of the best places in the whole country to retire in 2025. That's a big deal. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Retirement is a huge step, and a lot of people are worried about it. A recent survey from the Employee Benefit Research Institute found that a bunch of folks, both those still working and even some who are already retired, are concerned they won't have enough money. Plus, many are worried about changes to things like Social Security, which is a big source of income for retirees. So those concerns about financial security are completely understandable. It's probably the number one thing on most people's minds when they're planning their retirement. But money isn't the only thing you need to think about. When you're looking at your options, it's a good idea to take a more complete approach. The AARP suggests you look beyond just good weather, being close to family, or finding a cheap house. You should really think about what your life might look like 10 years from now. Consider your future mobility, your budget, and how you'll stay connected to people. Good tip from retirement coaches is to try out a place with a short-term rental first. That way, you can see if the city really fits your lifestyle before you make a big move. People are moving around more for retirement than you might think. Before the pandemic, over 3 million people over the age of 65 moved to a new place. Factors like politics, how much a home costs, and general living expenses can all play a role in that decision. A recent Wallet Hub report pointed out that retirees are looking for a few key things: safety, great healthcare, and a lot of fun stuff to do. And of course, good weather is always a plus. Some people might also want to live somewhere they can find part-time work or be closer to their family. To figure out their list, Wallet Hub looked at more than 180 cities and checked out things like how affordable the place is, what activities are available, the overall quality of life, and the healthcare options. And Florida really stood out, with 4 cities making the top 7. Big reason for that is our state doesn't have an estate or inheritance tax, and we don't even have an income tax either. Orlando in particular grabbed the #1 spot on the list. It's really tax-friendly. It's also one of the most affordable cities for services like in-home care. Plus, it has a lot of hospitals and facilities that specialize in caring for older adults. The study also highlighted all the fun things there are to do in Orlando, like visiting music venues, going fishing, and checking out art galleries. Besides Orlando, Miami came in at #4, Tampa at #5, and Fort Lauderdale at #7. Other cities that made the top 10 include Scottsdale, Arizona, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Atlanta, Georgia, Cincinnati, Ohio, Madison, Wisconsin, and Casper, Wyoming. Every city on the list has its own strengths. For example, Scottsdale is #1 for quality of life, while Casper is the most affordable. San Francisco is the best for activities, and Missoula, Montana leads the way in healthcare. Now, while moving can be a great option, a lot of people do choose to stay right where they are. But even staying in your current home can have its own challenges, according to Rodney Harrell from the AARP. It says things like rising housing costs, paying for home renovations, and a lack of local support services can all be difficult. His advice is to think about your future self and not just your needs today, because things like your income, transportation, and health needs can all change as you get older. Now let's talk about something that's on a lot of people's minds: the housing market. There's a lot of talk about how owning a home is a great way to build wealth. And a recent survey confirms that baby boomers are really counting on it. Many of them have lived in their homes for decades and are expecting to make a huge profit, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, when they finally decide to sell. This is a big deal because these long-term homeowners have seen their property values skyrocket over the last 20 years. It's a huge financial gain for them, but it also creates a tricky situation for younger generations trying to buy their first home. You hear a lot of people blaming boomers for the lack of available homes on the market, but the truth is, the housing situation is way more complicated than that. Things like stagnant wages, the high cost of building new homes, and a shortage of available land due to zoning laws all play a huge role. It's not just one generation's fault. In fact, a lot of boomers are tired of being the scapegoat with about 76% saying they're sick of the blame. Many boomers are sitting on a gold mine. The survey found that a majority of them expect to make at least $100,000 in profit if they sold their homes today. And some even believe they could even get over $500,000. And honestly, depending on where you live, they're probably right. For instance, in some areas, a 10% increase in home value can add $100,000 to your equity in just 2 years. We've seen an even bigger jump than that recently, especially since the pandemic. It's like the market appreciated 15 years worth of value in just 2. This incredible growth has made a lot of boomers feel that their home has been a better investment for them than their actual career. A lot of the disconnect comes from how different the housing market is now compared to when boomers first bought in. Most older homeowners today paid less than $100,000 for their first house, and many even paid under $50,000. Back then, the cost of a home was only about 2 or 3 times the average household income. Today, it's over 5 times higher. It's no wonder younger buyers are struggling, especially with investors now competing with all cash offers. The numbers are pretty jarring. Since 1985, home prices have grown 4 times faster than household incomes. It's a completely different world. Despite the struggles of younger buyers, many boomers support policies that protect their home values, even if it makes things harder for others. A lot of them don't feel the government should help first-time home buyers because they didn't get that help themselves. The survey even found that about 12% of older homeowners don't care if staying in their homes keeps younger people from buying. That being said, it's not all bad news. A lot of boomers still believe the government should be doing more to help first-time home buyers. So, what happens if boomers stay put? Well, most of them say they plan to live in their homes forever. Only about 10% plans on selling in the next 5 years. This is a big reason why the average age of a first-time home buyer is now 38 years old, which is a record high. When boomers were first buying houses, the average first-time buyer was in their late 20s. With so many large family homes locked up, we may start to see more multiple generation households and properties being passed down to family members instead of sold on the open market. This could lead to a system where homeownership is more about who you know or inherit from rather than what you can afford. Of course, life has a way of changing our plans. Even if a boomer says they'll never move, things like the cost of home repairs or their own health can eventually force their hand. Things as simple as replacing a roof can be a major expense on a fixed retirement income. And as people get older, mobility issues can make staying in a multi-story house impossible. That's usually when a lot of older homeowners finally decide it's time to sell. So you might have heard some news about hurricane season, and I wanted to break it down for you. You know how those weather experts like the ones at AccuWeather make predictions every year? Well, they just updated their forecasts for this hurricane season, which officially ends on November 30th. Basically, they're now saying we'll likely see a few less storms than they initially thought. They had originally predicted maybe 13 to 18 named storms, but now they've brought that down to somewhere between 13 and 16. Same goes for hurricanes. They're now expecting 69 of them instead of the 7 to 10 they first predicted. The main reason for this change is that the atmosphere has been a little less friendly to storm formation. They've seen things like dry air and even dust from the Sahara Desert blowing over, which can actually mess with a storm's ability to form. There's also been some wind shear, which is basically when winds are blowing at different speeds and directions at different altitudes. And that can really disrupt a hurricane from getting organized. Now, Big thing to remember is that we're not totally in the clear. The water in the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America is still incredibly warm, and that's a huge concern. As one of the hurricane experts put it, that warm water is like a rocket fuel for storms. So if a storm does manage to form or move into the Gulf, those warm waters could cause it to get much stronger, much faster. So far this season, things have been pretty quiet with only 6 named storms. That's a lot less than last year when we had 18 named storms and 3 of them hit Florida. But even with this new forecast, the experts are still warning that we should be prepared. It's always better to be safe than sorry, especially when we're talking about our homes and our families. Thanks for letting me be your guide through the Florida housing market today. My goal is always to make this complex world feel a little bit simpler and a lot more accessible for you. The truth is, the market changes every day, but having a local expert by your side makes all the difference. Whether you're thinking of buying your first home, selling an investment property, or just want to know what your home's worth, I'm here to help. Feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact information is right in the description below. And for more local insights and market updates, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next video.